Good evening and welcome back to the St. Pete by Night Twitch channel where we play St. Petersburg by Night, a massive multiplayer 5th edition World of Darkness chronicle set in the city of St. Petersburg, Florida. My name is Kent, also known as Kent on all social media. Although don't go follow that. What you should do is go follow St. Pete by Night on all of the social media listed down below and in the description of the video so you can support this massive, amazing, wonderful project that we have had going on now for over 2 years, which is completely startling to me. I'm happy to be back because I've been gone for the past month, and what you're watching tonight is After Dark, which is our behind the scenes program, which has been on hiatus while I've taken a much deserved vacation. But we're back, we're getting back to business, and I couldn't be more excited about our guest tonight. It is one of our longer running chronicles here since the revamp, and it is our Vampire the Masquerade chronicle known as Bloody Strings, run by Devlin, formerly known as Bera the Bard. Bloody Strings has been a story that has taken our coterie to the depths of politics and intrigue, but also into the depths of insanity, as this particular coterie is a very interesting mix of individuals, to say the very least. But we're going to learn a little bit about that. And if you've been keeping up with the story, you'll hear some interesting moments that you might not have considered, some insight into what's to come, and get to know the players of the amazing characters that take place in Bloody Strings. So, let's take a moment for our wonderful guests slash players to introduce themselves and who they play. Take it away.
Yeah, I'm Kyrie, and I play Gray Novak, as I say on the stream, a Toreador with big dreams, huge ambitions.
Hi, I'm Noree. I play Bellatrix the Malkavian, who just likes to have fun.
Hello, I am Lekar, and as I like to say on the stream, I am usually playing the well-dressed ne'er-do-well Matthew Halden.
Hello, I am Truck EXE, and I play Nicholas Baldridge, our local Alice going through that down the rabbit hole.
Down the rabbit hole, indeed. And I think people don't quite realize just how deep that rabbit hole is, as Bloody Strings is one of our shows that we pre record. So you are actually several episodes in the future, as they say, that have not yet been aired. And having been able to keep tabs on all that this whole time, I can tell everyone watching that they are in for a wild ride, to say the very least. But we'll get into all of that. I'm very fortunate and honored to have had several of you on this show before. But I know, Truck, this is actually going to be your first time on the show, and I'm so grateful to have you here. Also, I'm happy to say that I've known most of you for quite some time and have had the opportunity to play with each and every one of you, whether it be in solo sessions or group sessions or pre-vamp sessions or whatever the case may be. I've even guest starred on Bloody Strings a few times, and I can tell you that this is one of my favorite groups I've had the honor to watch, and I know Bera is very lucky to have you at his table and at this group, and the story you guys have told so far is absolutely amazing. So I'm going to ask you some questions, some of them just to refresh our viewers' knowledge about you if you've been a guest before, but also to introduce them to you, or you to them, properly. So let's just go ahead and start in a few sentences. How did you discover the World of Darkness? How did you find Vampire the Masquerade? And how did you get into this wild world of a hobby or a setting that we all know and love? Kyrie, we'll start with you.
Yeah, sure. So it's kind of the result of many years ago, a magic tournament that failed to materialize, and then getting roped into a one-shot World of Darkness game, and getting exposed to having your Anarch's Haven kicked in by the local Camarilla as your first exposure to the game. So that was my first session. Kind of hooked me since, and been reading into the lore and the background, and made it all the way through up to V5 now and having a great time.
And for anybody who doesn't know, I got to do a one-on-one interview with Kyrie here on After Dark several months ago. So go check the previous videos and go watch that interview because we really, really get into the depths of all of that. And I'm hoping at some point we can do a part 2 and do a catch-up because there were so many questions I didn't get to ask on that particular stream that I still have to ask. But it was a fantastic interview. Go back and watch it if you haven't had the opportunity yet. Noree, how about you? How did you find the World of Darkness and get hooked to it?
Mine was also many, many years ago. It was back in high school. I think I was in a bookstore when I first came across the books, but I ended up joining with a group of friends that ran the game and played my first character, which was a Ravnos.
Fantastic. And Lekar.
I'd say it was about 2001. I was in college and I had just met some random guy in a coffee shop and we just, we became friends. And then one day he introduced me to some other friends and he was like, "Hey, we're having this background LARP about vampire." And I'm like, "Okay." I've always been intrigued by vampires as a whole, the lore of everything, Dracula, all those things. So I'm like, okay. So I introduced some other friends of mine that I went to school with, and we just kind of got absorbed into it. And then after a while, the game fell off, and I just put it out of my mind, and then bounced back in as soon as this started back up.
Little did you know that it was a ghoul at the time almost breaching the masquerade that was trying to bring you into the cult, but it's fine.
Exactly.
Truck, how about you?
It's funny compared to the rest of y'all. I'm more a baby. I just in my older age discovered TikTok, then I discovered all y'all, and I was brought in at the startup, and then the rest is a sordid history of multiple character deaths and all the fun I could ever imagine, and I've been hooked on VTM ever since.
I know it can be quite a learning experience, especially if you're coming from like a D&D background or a Pathfinder background or anything like that. It's a widely and vastly different game. And so there are definitely some learning curves and some bumps along the road. But I have to say, and I want to compliment you specifically, Truck, as you were somebody who came in fresh out the box into the Vampire the Masquerade experience with St. Pete, that you have shown such amazing growth and such amazing development over the years that we've been playing. Just like you have become a fantastic player, and I feel like that is shown in Bloody Strings. Again, we'll get to that in a little bit. There's so much we have to talk about, but I did want to just mention that outright, is that watching you from the first day, from the first Elysium to now, the growth is magnificent and wonderful, and I'm very proud of you as your first storyteller, and I do hope that you recognize just how far you've come. It's an amazing thing. So the next question I would have to ask all of you is, what about the Worlds of Darkness or Vampire the Masquerade hooked you specifically? Because it's a very niche game. Ever since the 2000s, it kind of dropped out of the public perspective. It was very popular in the 90s, but then into the 2000s, it kind of faded away with White Wolf falling apart and the game kind of going into obscurity. So for it to be having this slow reemergence now, what was it about this particular game that hooked you and kept you on loving World of Darkness? Kyrie, we'll start with you.
Yeah, no, back in the 90s, it was different than everything else that was on the shelves at the time. Like there was nothing that was pushing a narrative experience. There was nothing that was pushing a collaborative experience. Even a lot of D&D, even at the time, was very competitive. While it wasn't overtly that way, you got that sense whenever you sat down at a table. It was the players versus the DM instead of them working together. And to have something come out and start to push that narrative experience over the mechanical experience, and then reading through it and then playing in it, it was such a radically different thing that I was like, I really have to like play this more. Unfortunately, as it was with my group at the time, nobody actually wanted to run, so I ended up taking that on me and being the storyteller. But it has definitely been the difference between it and everything else. And I think that's really started to show recently. You say it's coming back now, you know, kind of faded away for a little while. I think it really started to show recently when there was a lot more indie RPGs that started to come out to focus on the narrative experience. And then there's this one who's, you know, the honestly the granddaddy of that narrative experience.
I couldn't agree more. And honestly, as much as the pandemic was a setback for all of us, being trapped in our homes, I feel like it was a great renaissance for TTRPGs with shows like Critical Role and Dimension 20 really taking off. And then, eventually LA by Night and New York by Night and all of those various streams. I feel like it exposed people to TTRPGs, and the hobby itself had a huge renaissance, a huge explosion of popularity. And whether that's going to maintain its level of popularity into the future is yet to be seen. But I can say that I think it really was a boon and a benefit to the community, to the hobby, and to games like Vampire the Masquerade, who got a chance to be noticed when people had nothing else to do, when they couldn't go outside or couldn't, participate. They discovered things like Vampire the Masquerade through TikTok and through various other social media, and it really did help the game increase in popularity. Noree, how about you?
So I guess I'm aging myself because I was in high school back in the 90s, and I wasn't really into D&D or never got into it. Like I never even played. Honestly, Vampire was my first game, my first role playing game ever because one, it was vampires and I really liked vampires. Two, like Kyrie said, that time D&D was more strategy based, so it really never caught my interest. But this was more role playing and story based, which definitely caught my interest. So I ended up playing with a bunch of friends that we played until I guess I graduated.
And Lekar.
When I'm introduced to new things, if they intrigue me, like I've played D&D for probably the last 30 years of my life. For as long as I can remember, I was always playing D&D. It was my first introduction into TTRPGs. And whenever something new comes out, a new system or a new game, if it has something that's different than what I'm used to, I always kind of dig in and see if I like it. And this thing is completely different. I mean, it's the same, but not the same as other TTRPGs. Like it's not like Pathfinder or D&D. You're not the hero, and it expressly tells you at the beginning there are no heroes in this game. And something like that was just very intriguing to me. And seeing it playing similar but completely all its own, a horse of a different color. I just love things like that. So it hooked me in.
I couldn't agree with you more. One of the things that I loved about Vampire the Masquerade and the World of Darkness is that it did take away the element of the traditional fantasy story. So many other games just take you down the hero's journey, the path of going into dungeons and slaying monsters and being saving the world and being the hero, which, don't get me wrong, is wonderful in its own right. But the fact that something like Vampire the Masquerade took a different perspective and was like, you are not the hero and you are not going to be the hero. Every splat of World of Darkness is basically a dark fate that you are destined to a bad ending no matter what you do. And it's about making the best, whether it's for yourself, whether it's for others, whether it's for the planet in the case of Werewolf the Apocalypse. You're going to end poorly. It's not going to work out for you. And I think that is a psychological experiment in its own right. Like you have to take on the perspective of a monster, and a lot comes to the surface about a person's individual personality or their mental state when they play a game like this, because we've seen toxic players, we've seen healthy players, we've seen a wide gamut of players in this community. And I think it is a really, really interesting challenge and an interesting opportunity in terms of role playing games to take on that perspective. Truck, how about you?
Well, when I was young, my father would constantly talk about the joys he had in with D&D with his brother and friends when they were growing up. And like I had always looked for that. believe it or not, before World of Darkness, I really hadn't played even D&D. But I always listen to, use things like Dimension 20, or in my case, the Unexpectables. Things like that fascinated me. And then getting into VTM specifically, it's the complexity and the nuance of the stories that can be told. It's, as much as you said, it's like it's bordering on grim dark as a setting, and my temperament, it makes me love, to their own detriment, love the ability to be a character that is facing this world of pure horror, cruelty, and darkness. Like, you're damned if you're a good person, but you're also damned if you only look out for yourself. And there's so much complexity and nuance, and like, it goes from, well, I want to be the hero, to I want to see, it becomes so much more in depth with the character. It's so character driven, and I love character stories. Because you can want to be the hero, and that will blow up in your face. You can want to be the selfish bastard, and that will blow up in your face. Ultimately, you're playing this individual that has an experience, which is something that I think a lot of us chase in TTRPGs. Like, you want that experience, you want that that feeling, that connectivity, and you want to see a story. And World of Darkness, I think, has some of the best, is one of the best facilitators for story.
Absolutely. I love the fact that they call them storytellers instead of dungeon masters or game masters or anything like that. Like, they really do push the narrative right away that you're here to tell a story, and they really, really encourage collaborative storytelling. It's not just, create a dungeon, create challenges, have the players overcome those challenges. It's not that, DM versus player perspective that Kyrie was talking about before. It's very much a collaborative experience where we're all telling this story together, and you are a storyteller just as much as I am, or Devlin is, or that's the case. Like, yes, we come up with the consequences or the benefits to your actions, but at the same time, you can take the story in a completely different direction than even we had planned, and a good storyteller goes along with that. You guys have had a really great storyteller in Devlin, because he's very, very good at just taking what you give him and rolling with it. And again, we'll talk about that more in a little bit, but it's a really, really great thing. So, with your wide variety of experience, some of you having done LARP, some of you having played since the 90s, or whatever the case may be, how is it that you came upon St. Pete by Night, and how did you get involved in that, since it was a very wild experiment and it was a very non-traditional game of the World of Darkness? How did you get into it, and what appealed to you about it that made you stick it out and keep playing it to this day? Kyrie.
Well, honestly, the reason that I got into it was because of Noree. She would tell me about it after she joined, and she would give me the rundown on what was happening in St. Pete, and things that were going on, and it slowly wore down my resistance. I feel to wanting to jump into a game, because I feel like a game is a commitment, and I wasn't sure that I was ready to even make that commitment at the time. And the more she told me about it, the more I was like, this sounds really cool. I think I'm going to jump in and see what I can. And it was December a couple years ago, I think, that I was like, fine, I'm going to go through this character creation process and make my character. It's been great ever since. I've had a great time. I had a great time in the prevamp. I've had a great time in the revamp. I think it's been 100% good. Even though there's been bumps here and there, but those are all just learning experiences, and I feel very blessed to be at a table with Devlin, because he is one of the best of the storytellers that I've had in my life experience. So
Absolutely. And you, one of the things we've talked about at great length is you got an opportunity to play. You just got to play the game rather than having been a lifelong storyteller and dungeon master and the whole gamut of that. You got a chance to actually be a player. And I think that's been a great opportunity for several people in this community who have just been stuck in that role of telling the stories over and over again. and it's just nice to step into being a player. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
yeah, it's wonderful. Noree, how about you?
So it actually started with TikToks of cosplays about St. Pete by Night. My They kept coming across my FYP, and at the time I was really fiending for a vampire game. Usually, Kyrie's and our group of friends, they like more D&D, so I have to practically beg them to play a vampire game or request it on my birthday. Um, and so I was kind of fiending, and I was like, I'll give it a try. And I decided to jump in, and I enjoyed role playing with a lot of people on the server in the prevamp, and then um, just lucked out on Kyrie and I forming a table at the revamp with getting Devlin.
Yeah, absolutely. And your table has come together so much so that you've even expanded to include two new members, which we haven't seen on stream yet, but we'll be getting to. I know that process was starting right before my vacation, so I'm excited to see how that's coming along and how they've meshed. But yeah, you guys have had a great chemistry and have been able to create a very wonderful and exciting and enticing story. And that was just a matter of circumstance that it worked out that way, and I'm really glad that it did. Lekar, how about you?
Same as Noree, actually. Through TikTok, a bunch of people were talking about doing it. I saw you were talking about starting this up. I do believe I think it was Cole invited me to the server originally, and then I just met all of these amazing people who've become like a third family to me, and I made so many friendships, and I found my people. I found people who were just as nerdy and just as dedicated to me. And at first, it was like, okay, I haven't played this game in 20 years. I don't know what I'm doing. And then I jumped back into it. And like Kyrie said, it's been a learning experience as we go since the prevamp. There were some, kinks, but we worked them out. Everything went great. And it's still a learning experience.
Well, and it's the dedication of the community and the amazing players that have made this experience possible. The fact that we even have a revamp is because people were so dedicated to this product, to this community, and to this game that we were able to just keep it going. As much as the staff has been a wonderful part of keeping this going, if we didn't have players, what would we be doing it all for? And this group is a perfect testament to that dedication and the fact that you did all come back, that you did all assume these roles, and you are making this incredible story. Truck is somebody who had never played Vampire the Masquerade, had nothing to do with it. I'm sure in some ways your story is similar to everyone else's, but tell me about how you discovered this community and what made you decide to become a part of it.
Well, as you said, it's much like everyone else. I wish I could say I remember who sent me the destined invite, but I can't recall. What I do recall was the first few months before everything finally started. Just like late nights talking with the likes of Cole, Gibby, Mac, you, Champ, just before everything even started, I had found a place to finally belong after the majority of my life not fitting in somewhere, not finding people like minded or like myself. And then suddenly it was like an explosion of people exactly that. So there were already friendships and bonds starting to form before things happen. And then despite its ups and downs, finding that community as that first iteration went along, getting to meet new people, uh, just having these intense moments and equal desire to enjoy this game between the entire community. Uh, it was basically a dream come true. It's like Vampire is great, but this none of this would be possible without the people that are in the server or have been part of the server that put in as much passion as they did. I mean, you basically created a place for people to feel welcome, and it's only branched out by magnitude since then.
Well, and that was the motivation. I wanted to bring people together. I wanted to share a love of a game that several people had never experienced before. But it's nice that it's also appealed to those that have experienced it before and have still brought them back. So we have a wide variety of experience levels, but also just the same level of passion, whether they've played it for a day or they've played it for 10, 20 years. Everybody is so passionate about this particular system and setting that the community just keeps trucking along, pun intended, all these years later. And it's fantastic that we've got a bright future ahead of us. Now, we've also had the wonderful opportunity to all meet in person. Speaking of passion, all of you were passionate enough about this community and this game to come attend Kindred Con. Lekar and Truck have attended every Kindred Con so far. And Kyrie and Noree, you came for your first time this year. And that has taken that community aspect to another level. Even though we've all been connected digitally for quite some time, taking it to that in-person level really did make the difference. So now let's talk about Bloody Strings specifically. This group, this game, this wild and unpredictable story that you all have taken us on. How did the group form from your perspective? What kind of was the driving motivation to the group? How did you all come together? And what was your initial impressions going into the game about this particular group, Kyrie?
Oh, that's actually a really good question. You talking from an in-character perspective or from an out-of-character
Out of
perspective?
character perspective. We'll talk about your in character perspectives after this.
No, out of character. Noree and I had gotten together and we talked and we were like, we want to definitely play. And I was like, who was really good, who I definitely ashamed that I didn't get a chance to play more with was Truck, because him playing John Hugo in the previous iteration and my character having a lot of scenes back and forth with him. That was a whole lot of fun. And then Noree told me that Lekar was really good, so we kind of like reached out there and kind of tried to figure out how we were going to meet. And then I think we were all talking in private messages on Discord, and then kind of got together and we were like, okay, so how are we going to go about getting a storyteller? How's this going to work? Because it was a revamp, we weren't sure how all that was going to work, and Noree really was the spearhead there. And she took care of most of that work. She was very good about keeping us organized and herding the cats, because we weren't necessarily the most organized folks. So I have to give her the most kudos there.
Noree, how about you?
Like Kyrie said, I think, yeah, we got together in private messages. We were going through the looking for group, uh, or talking ahead of time. Um, Kyrie and I knew we were going to play together. That was just going to happen. And yeah, like I really wanted all of us to just get on it and like hit the ground running once the forms came out, so that we could be up there, or a group could be up there in the selection pretty early, because we definitely had scheduling and particular STs that we really wanted to play with. Uh, Devlin being one of them, so we're all really happy we got Devlin, and it's just we clicked.
Well, and
Um,
you specifically are a masochist because I had already dragged you into the werewolf table to playtest werewolf and to make Rage Across Tampa the thing that it is, but you were willing to go even further and take on another game, joining in with this group and making Bloody Strings happen, which is again a testament to your dedication, but also how can you do that? Like it's crazy. You're on two streamed games. How do you make that happen?
well, I have to put myself in mindset for like the days that the streams are on. I usually listen to music and stuff like that. Um, in all honesty, for 4 days of the week, I am playing about 5 games. The other 2 to 3 are private servers, but yeah, I just like playing games. I like stories and games, so
Well,
I'm
and
just
what
living my best life.
I will say too, this group was a highly sought after group. There was definitely some negotiation back and forth on the storyteller side of things because people who don't know, for a little peek behind the curtain, we let the groups form first and create forms requesting which storytellers they would like to work with. And then the storytellers had to basically get in the octagon and fight one another to pick the groups they wanted to work with. And I can say that this group was definitely one of the groups that was highly contested in regards to who was going to be fortunate enough and lucky enough, mostly between me, Bera, and Calf, but fortunate enough and lucky enough to be able to work with this group. And we were all very happy with the way it turned out. But I know that there are some of us who are like, if we get a crack at that table one day, we are going to bring it. But no, it's very, very wonderful that you did end up with Devlin, because he is a fantastic storyteller. And that is a great opportunity. Lekar, how about you? What was your perspective on the forming of this group and it all coming together?
Well, honestly, I think between these three, I think the most I've interacted was probably a toss up between Noree and Truck in their characters. I had never previously interacted with Kyrie's characters at all, but I watched him and I just love what he brought. So when we started talking about it, I'm like, oh, this is going to be fantastic. Because I've seen I've seen Truck's characters and I've seen Noree's characters and I've seen just glimpses of Kyrie's. So being able to sit down and actually talk with them about it, it was like, okay, people I haven't really played with, but I have. This is going to be either the most devastating thing ever or it's going to be fantastic.
And it's been a little bit of both. I think it's
Absolutely.
but it's been fantastic, to say the very least. Anybody who hasn't been watching these episodes really does need to play catch up, because it is a really intriguing, deep story that these characters go on. That is not just your typical TTRPG story. There's a lot of psychological elements. There's a lot of interpersonal elements, and there's a lot on the horizon yet to come, where you're going to really get into the depths of these characters. And that is something that is very interesting about new groups coming together, is chemistry. And I felt like you guys found a very strong chemistry quickly. But before we get to that, Truck, go ahead and talk about your experience being brought into this group and it forming.
I actually remember it pretty well because I'm one of those types that felt like, oh, I'd be putting such a burden trying to ask someone, but also like the autistic side of me was like, okay, I need specific things that I know I'm comfortable with for this first try. So I was like, you know who I had a lot of fun with despite not getting to interact much was Kyrie's Ian. And then I just started asking him. At the same time, I was also double dipping, asking if Lekar had a table at the same time. So it kind of actually worked out great. But legitimately, I felt like I still feel like I got led into the not just the cool kids tables, but the superstars table. Um, I could not have asked for a more at home experience with people that have not only helped me grow as a player, but made me feel comfortable as a person. Like it, and I was so worried about that, and it just that worry went out the window with these three. And when I know for a fact when everyone gets to see our new additions, they're going to love them as well. The like because we did a one shot with the new additions. That first there was that first one shot trepidation, but the moment they came in, like officially, out the gates running. There's something special about this table
Well, and
that I feel.
it must have been very intimidating at first, because you were
Oh
coming
yeah,
into a table of established players as someone who is still trying to find their footing in the world of darkness, trying to find, because you
absolutely,
talked about character deaths and everything like
absolutely.
that. You were trying to really find your footing, and I'm really happy to hear that you did feel welcome and that you did feel like you had helping hands to help guide you on the process. And it's shown again in your play, and even in the course of this show itself, from episode 1 to where you are now. It's clear that there has been that positive influence on you. What were some of your specific trepidations or fears coming in, and what was it that really soothed those fears or assuaged them?
Honestly, it's legitimate because, as you said, I had multiple character deaths. I do feel each character was memorable, but I hadn't had the chance to not only fully experience the mechanics of VTM, but also just compared to everyone else here, I am young as a player in terms of experience. And as I said, I've seen Kyrie's expertise. N- I uh I got to role play with Noree a good bit as Hugo, and Lekar I had seen with his character Alex, just taking charge with his unique Tremere this whole time. And I was coming in with, okay, I don't have a single character that's lasted more than I think about 4 months. And here I was like, okay, we're gonna try Malkavian again. We're gonna be trying something weird, unique. We're gonna be going with a personality that lends itself to getting in trouble. And like once the jitters are over, one of the biggest things we do is roses, buds, and thorns every session. And it has become not only integral, it's one of the things I personally look forward to the most out of every session. I've like Nori's great. If there's any standout, it's Noree with giving out, hey, here's a thorn, but this is how you can work on it. And almost every time she does that, I can start improving immediately. It's like she can speak exactly the way I need to hear it. Kyrie is one of the best givers of positive reinforcement when it comes to how you're playing something. He shows such exuberance and enjoyment about someone else having fun. And Lekar loves to like experience the sensation of a session. When Lekar does Roses, Buds, and Thorns, there you can feel legitimately how he feels about how the session went. And it's one of the greatest things that this table has given me because all that combined are they're already great on their own, but combined they legitimately create that feeling of connection and enjoyment, and it's one of the most relaxing, enjoyable parts of this whole experience.
Yeah, that's so good to hear. Now let's talk about the characters a little bit because these are some very deep and very thoroughly thought out characters. So, one by one, I'd like to go through you and have you describe your characters, what the thought process was going into them, if you had any certain inspirations you took from in the creation of the character, and just what that whole process was for anybody who hasn't seen the show before or anybody who doesn't know what's happened. Feel free to give them, a few spoilers, but try to, keep that hook out there for those who have yet to watch, as well as those who are watching. But Kyrie, we'll start with you. Go ahead and tell us about Gray.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised that Barrett even allowed me to play this character. There is so much about it that is reaching in the lore and tying things together that necessarily shouldn't be tied together, and is stringing along one idea to another idea, and then saying, "Hey, this is the connection between those." Um, as the coterie likes to joke, Gray is a walking red flag, but I feel like my character sheet is a red flag to any storyteller when they look at it, because they're just like, what the hell have you done here? And so the fact that Devlin was willing to take that and say, "Oh yeah, this is something I can work with," like was absolutely surprising. But as far as inspirations go, I mean, it's in the name. I wear the inspiration on my sleeve. Dorian Gray was the inspiration for Gray, and just how bad Dorian Gray could get if he ended up as a vampire. No picture to end his existence, and how bad is he going to get over time? There's a While he is young for a vampire, without giving too many spoilers away for what's coming up in the future. He's he's not inexperienced. He is no novice when it comes to kindred society, and it has been very interesting navigating all of that. At the table while trying not to give away too much to my fellow players.
So give me the brief character description of Gray for anybody who hasn't met him. Yes, we're seeing a lot in the chat about him being a huge red flag, but what? Just kind of give us a rundown of who people would meet when they meet Gray and what type of character he is.
Sure. Yeah, he is ridiculously pretty and ridiculously slimy at the same time. He is probably the epitome of bad guy. In fact, one of the primary, I think, motivation, at least musically, for him was Lana Del Rey's "Gods and Monsters." He has been in a world of monsters for so long that he has become one, and it is second nature. And in order to hold on to what he considers to be human, he is more of a monster than he tries to let on. Um, but yeah, he's definitely a socialite. Definitely likes to be the center of attention. Definitely likes to make sure that the coterie knows that he is the reason for everyone's existence. Whether or not they believe that, that's a different story.
But like most Toreador, Gray is a Toreador with a secret. Well, several secrets, let's be honest. But he has one particular secret that those who are watching will be surprised to discover. And I definitely encourage people to keep a very, very sharp eye and take notes on Gray, because something that is said in session one might have a little bit more meat to it than it you think it will in session 25. So just simply keep your eyes out for that. But Noree, go ahead and tell us about Bellatrix.
Yes. So Bella is one of my Chaos Gremlin characters. I think she's probably one of my. It's 50-50 with a different character, but she came from a beginning thought experiment inspiration of what it would be like um, if a character or a person failed to ascend via like Mage the Ascension or Old Mage the Ascension, like how it could drive someone crazy. And I kind of just ran with that idea. So she became like this very broken character, but at the same time, she kind of really goes on her whims and thoughts. And she's a bit of a space cadet as well. She tends to be She has a big like connection to the stars and believes the stars tell her the future.
Well, and you were one of the first people who came to me to tie your character into the St. Pete lore, specifically into characters that are unique to the St. Pete experience. You chose, for better or worse, to be a child of Al, of Alexei the Malkavian, who has a very storied history in the St. Pete lore. What was the motivation and decision behind that? I know we'd released the St. Pete lore sheets, and we were making some options available. What was it about that that spoke to you and made you want to go down that particular bumpy, rocky, twisty path?
Well, as a player, I always in the prevamp, I always enjoyed watching and interacting with Al, even though Naomi, my previous character, did not like Al at all and did not want to play his games. And so I really like wanted a character that could interact more, and I definitely wanted to go on playing this character as a Malkavian, and I just thought it would be a great way to tie her into St. Pete and have a reason for her to be here.
Wonderful. Lekar, let's talk about Matthew.
Okay. Matthew is if Matt Bomer's character, Neil Caffrey from White Collar, was turned into a vampire. He's a very pretty boy. But unlike most Toreador, he doesn't like to be the center of attention because of his, we'll call it hobby that he does for a living, which is where how he's made his money and his living, you know, being what he does, doing what he does. So he's kind of the Toreador who doesn't act like a Toreador in a way, but he's still the pretty boy who knows how to get the attention if he needs.
Yeah, so it seemed like you took a lot of motivation from that character, but you've definitely put spins of it of your own onto the character. You know, it's so easy, and I've made this mistake plenty of times early on in my TTRPG career of just taking a character from a piece of media and playing that exact character. But instead, while you've taken inspiration, I do feel like Matthew has over time especially found his way from your guidance, from your, you know, your motivations and your inspirations. And I do appreciate the fact that it's very easy to, you know, look at a character based off their name or something and be like, oh, they're a copy of this character. But that's not the case with you. I feel like you really have kind of taken a new twist on Toreador to a certain degree, but you've also really got your fingerprints all over it, and that's something that I really appreciate about Matthew. Truck, now let's talk about Nicholas.
Oh man. So to start with, I I wanted to avoid classic fish milk. There's one thing I enjoy doing. It's either deconstructing or subverting with characters, but I didn't want to go too far out to be like, oh no, like he's a Malkavian, but no, he's definitely a Toreador type thing, you know. Um, but generally, it started off as like, okay, this is a character that has his touchstones really affect him. His touchstones are the motivation for him wanting to be better, be a better person, deny the monster. But of course, as time goes on in this world, you know, that's called into question. And if there's anything I learned about Nick by playing him, it's that I don't know Nick because Nick doesn't know Nick, which will become apparent in very unique ways. And I gotta give Devlin all the credit. I gave him a foundation, and he's given me more than even I think I could have come up with. Um, when it comes to who he was and who he is, it's fascinating to not only be playing this character but also in the process watching him either evolve, digress, or change based on what information's given to him. And I think we're going to be, if there's anything I can say, it's we're going to be seeing a lot of what exactly existence is to Nick and how he's going to go forward with what happens.
Well, and I remember when Devlin came to me to talk about this story that he wanted to tell with Nick, and the more and more we talked about it, the more exciting it got. And so I think people are in for a real treat as they come to discover that story throughout the process of watching the Bloody Strings journey, because it's a new take. It's very fascinating, and I think it is a discovery. One thing I really like about Nick and this party as a whole is I feel like we see the two different ends of humanity and everything in between in this group. You know, in a lot of other groups, you'll kind of see far to one side or far to the other. You'll get either very humane, very, you know, good doing vampires, or you'll see the evil, no humanity, psychopath vampires. And this one covers, this group as a whole covers the entire spectrum, with Nick being one of the most humane characters I think I've seen played, with his connections to the past, with his morals and his compass of what's right versus what's wrong. And then the other side being more gray and possibly even Bella at certain points, with the maybe what I think is right isn't necessarily humane. What I think is traditionally humane. And I think that creates an interesting dichotomy between the characters and the interpersonal relationships between the characters, as it seems like there's a slight tug of war match happening at times, and it's always a surprise to see who's on what side of the rope, because it switches at points throughout the stories. There's times where, you know, Gray might be on one side, Nick might be on the other, and Bella might flip-flop between the two depending on what the particular issue is. And same with Matthew. Like he kind of tries to stay in the middle, and just tries to do his own thing. But there are definitely certain issues that pull him to one side or pull him to the other side. And that makes a really, really cool group dynamic between all of you. So, speaking of the story of Bloody Strings, let's talk about some favorite moments you've had so far. Preferably starting with ones that have already aired, but if there are any particular moments you want to hint at that are yet to come, feel free to, in a spoiler free way, hint at those. But what are some of your favorite moments you've had so far on this Bloody Strings journey, Kyrie?
I think one of my most favorite moments happened very recently or aired very recently. It was a one-on-one session. It was Devlin and me, and I was doing some stuff for Gray's backstory, and ended up having to contact a family member who none of his tricks actually really work on because it's a family member and they know him and they know that he's basically a walking lie. Um, so as he's trying to cajole what he wants out of his father, ends up going very horribly. And the way that Devlin handled that scene, like I as a player felt the gut punch at the same time that like my character did, and it was one of the most fantastic scenes that I've had. Just the way that that rolled out. Um, my other favorite moment, talking about being on different sides of stories or different sides of issues, was where and it was interesting because Matt actually ended up being the dissenting voice in this. While it was like the three of us, it was Gray, it was Bella, it was Nick, who were all like, no, this is the way we have to go. And it was very surprising to see how Gray and Nick actually aligned on something, and the dissenter was Matt, and that was another great moment. We that was in front of the Prince, in fact, which was great to have you on the stream for that as well.
Noree.
There are a lot. I think one of my favorite scenes was the scene at the art show, um, with all the chaos happening and everything. Like, I love to see just how it was affecting everybody's characters, um, and just the fact that we tried and Lekar was still like, "Crap, it broke," and all of us were panicking and freaking out. And then in the other scene when we meet Edward, he did not care at all. And like discovering the fact that he'd been using us was just brilliant. And so like just those groups of scenes just flowing into each other like were some of my favorite moments.
One thing that is a boon and a drawback about this particular group is you guys are so good at keeping the story flowing that as the person who has to edit for the podcast, it's impossible to tell when to take a break sometimes because you guys just move seamlessly from one scene to the next. And that again speaks to your chemistry, it speaks to your creativity and your talent as players. You guys just keep the story rolling along that it's really hard to be like, okay, we need to step away from this for a minute. Where do I do that? And I absolutely think that is a huge, huge boon to all of you is that you do keep the story engaging and interesting to the point that it is hard to step back and take a break from it because you just want to know what happens next. Lekar, what are some of your favorite moments from this story so far?
Honestly, one of the things I was going to mention was one that Kyrie mentioned, with that, with Matt being the dissenting voice amongst all of this, and watching the look on their faces, like, wait, wait, is that the same Matthew we walked in here with? Because that doesn't sound like him. And yeah, it was no, I nothing to do with this. No, bye. But another one, um, it was actually a scene with me and Kyrie. It was one of the earlier episodes, and just being able to play off of each other with things where Matt and Gray have to sneak into a police station. Just being able to play off of each other and just roll with it was just, I loved it so much. And Kyrie is always so over the top as Gray, just so over the top, and I love every second of it.
That's fantastic. Truck, how about you? You've had a lot of
Uh,
big moments on this, so
Really, really.
trying to limit it to some of your favorites is probably going to be quite a challenge. But
It's tough, yeah. What's seen so far, I think, what has stood out to me so much was the moment um after the first night at the art exhibit. Um, a moment with Nick and Gray, of all people. Nick having come to terms with something, not only seeing something Gray had done, but had experiencing it from the point of view of, shall we say, the victim. And Gray, in a rare moment of honesty, seeing what he had done, and for once, Nick didn't blame Gray. The one time Gray's actually apologizing. As for what's coming up, I really can't say much, but I'd have to say there's so many standouts coming up. A twofer is basically a choice is coming. One that's out of the blue, but also there for those who are looking. And all that leads up to, including something truly monumental that is very recent, and I cannot wait for everyone to see.
one thing that I really another thing, one of many things that I like about this particular group is in a lot of games, the setting plays as a backdrop. It's it can just simply be a name of locations. It can simply be like a backdrop on a play, just painted scenery on the back wall while all the action's happening in the forefront. But something about this particular game is you all have, pun intended, sunk your teeth into the setting. You've interacted with a lot of the, characters that came from the prevamp or were established before. You really have found a groove within the setting itself and taken advantage of the opportunities that the setting creates. And really, rather than following the path of a specific story, you have really made roots in St. Pete and the St. Pete setting. What has been kind of the motivation behind that, and what about, well, we'll just put it this way, who are some of your favorite SPCs? Kyrie, go ahead.
Oh man, that's a great question. Honestly, Gray says it a lot, but as far as I'm concerned, I really do like Edwin as an SPC. I do like how he has engaged with our coterie. I do like our coterie's relationship with him. He's one of my favorites. I think secondary to Edwin, and I haven't had a whole lot of chance to dig into it, but I absolutely love Carmine, especially the difference between what you would expect from a Toreador Prince and what you get out of Carmine. And that's one thing that I have been trying to balance, not to give too many spoilers away for what's in the future, but I'm wanting Gray to have a couple one-on-ones with Carmine, and this over-the-top Toreador with this very down-to-earth, stodgy Toreador is going to be an interesting combination to have. And then thirdly, I would be absolutely remiss if I didn't say that I love Charlie. She Champ is created one of the mainstay characters, I feel, of the setting, and as the Oracle, her ability to improv, Champ's ability to improv and let you know that Charlie knows with the way that she phrases something is very, very good and very cool. And I love the way that works.
Yeah, she is by far the most requested legacy SPC on the server. Champ has made so many appearances as Charlie, and that is a testament to her, the character, and to her ability to play it at a moment's notice. At the drop of a hat, she can fall into that Charlie role so well, and she just always provides something interesting to a situation, and if you have the right prism to see it through, you can see that there's a lot going on even when it seems like there's very little. And I couldn't agree with you more. She is a joy to play with in that role as Charlie, as well as any other role she plays, but especially as Charlie, there's so much depth to that. Noree.
So I'm going to have to agree with Kyrie on one of my first. Edwin is one of my favorite SPCs. Um, yes, the way he's manipulative and like sneaky and quiet what he's doing, but at the same time, sometimes Devlin's expressions, especially when he's dealing with Malkavians, is just hilarious and it gets me every time. Um, Second, I would have to go with Al. Like I enjoyed Al during the prevamp so much that I like made a character that was his child. I enjoy the like nuanced version that is Al. Like a lot of people think he's just this like fun, happy, crazy guy that likes to manipulate people and throw parties, but like there is a deeper side to him, and I look forward to exploring that more, as well as like I think I said it in well, I think I said it people will see it in one of the future ones. Just watching him manipulate people is mwah, like you do an excellent job on that. And third, Charlie. It is like Champ does such a great job, and she can go from just like the tone of her voice can go from like, oh, I'm so happy just playing around to no, you're gonna do what I told you to do. And she does it in the nicest way possible, but you could hear like the primogen in her when she gets that voice, and I love it all the time.
Oh, absolutely. Lekar.
Yes, I will have to just continue and echo the sentiment that Edwin is one of my favorites. Just, I know from the previous iteration and my own legacy character what he brings to the table. But the more that we play with Devlin and we listen to what he does and everything, it's just surprising. Um, all of his SPCs that he brings are unique in their own way, and you can tell the difference between how he plays or speaks with each one. Um, Definitely Carmine. I absolutely love Carmine. He is such a how do I say it? He's definitely a different chapter from the same book that you brought with Isabel. You can see how they're connected, but at the same time, they're two different people. You could have very easily just changed the skin on Isabel and just rolled with it, but you made a unique character with them, and seeing that difference is spectacular. And yes, Al terrifies me, and the way you play him scares me, haunts my dreams, and I mean that in the best way possible. And definitely Charlie, because it is just you know what she's doing with Charlie, you can hear what she's saying, but you also know there is more to it. Like the bagel question. You absolutely know, okay, this is just anybody who doesn't know anything about her would be like, that's an odd question. And you're sitting there psychoanalyzing yourself because you're like, wait, that makes sense. And she has just completely broken your character down and gotten inside your head before you even realize what was going on.
No, it's a talent. She's the ultimate personality test, and I think people don't even realize how deep those personality tests go. It's a wonderful experience that I encourage everyone to take the opportunity to go on if you ever see Charlie in Open RP or have an opportunity to interact with her. It's wild. Truck.
I have to concur with everyone. Although Nick hasn't had much cause to really interact with NPCs or SPCs at the moment. Though that is probably going to change soon. Though I have to agree when it comes to Edwin is quite interesting, and the number of times we've had to bail his ass out of the fire. But I'm actually so it's a small, it's kind of small, it's kind of not. Devlin has done a wonderful job with Alex, Nick's ghoul. Alex is such a core part of Nick. Yeah, a lot of time he's in the background, but he's also, unlike a lot of school and kindred relationships, like Alex is Nick's friend, a very, very close one, in fact. And I think Devlin does a great job giving Alex personality despite being mute and having to use ASL, bringing a lot of expressiveness to him. And there's a bond there that truly feels real. And it's one of my every time I get to have Nick and Alex interact, it's always a joy.
So let's talk about Devlin. He has been one of the longest running storytellers on the St. Pete Experience, was a storyteller in the prevamp, and obviously in the revamp is the one steering the ship behind Bloody Strings and is telling the story. What has your experience been with Devlin as your storyteller? What are some of the positives or the positive takeaways you've had from having them as your storyteller throughout this experience? And let's see if we can make them blush a little bit, as I know they're watching live in the chat right now. Let's talk about what's been great about having Devlin as a storyteller, Kyrie.
Yeah, so one of the first things I was told when I came to the St. Pete and the prevamp was that if Devlin shows up in the chat, you need to find out an excuse for your character to get out because your character's going to get hurt bad. And I was like, wait. So you're telling me that if this particular storyteller shows up, that's when everything gets interesting. And so I was trying to watch to find reasons to get into chats where I could see that Devlin was in. And so that's one of the big impetus that I had with with putting down which storytellers I wanted for the revamp. And that's why Devlin made it at the top of my list. He has a fantastic control of intrigue. And not just intrigue, but your character's lens into that intrigue, right? Like he presents um, these situations in such a way where you know what your character can see, you know what your character's understanding of the situation is, but then he'll drop a hint here, or a NPC will do something there, which will kind of broaden that lens out a little bit, and you'll realize there's something else going on here. And so then you dig into that and you realize, oh, it goes even deeper. Like this iceberg goes all the way down if I keep going. And that is my favorite part about being at his table, is that the iceberg honestly doesn't end. There is always another layer to the intrigue, and his control of the jihad in general is really cool.
Noree.
Okay. Totally agree with what Kyrie said. Like, one of my favorite things is the intrigue and the layers that Devlin builds. A lot of the times I'll be like, okay, I think I've gotten an idea of what's going on. And then he'll turn around like in a scene and completely just like throw me off with new information. And I'll be like, well, this just got more interesting. Another thing is um, he's gotten really good at tailoring the premonitions that Bella and Nick have to their characters and their characters' perspectives. And so like they come out really interesting, and still try to figure some of them out. Like sometimes it's difficult. Um, and then most recently, like one of my favorite moments, I think, happened in the last session we played. I think it was during a vignette. He and I had planned something for my vignette, for Bella's vignette, and it ended up like we both just got into the scene and it went completely a different direction. And like I ended up finding something super cool. Um, be sure to watch so you'll figure that out, because it ties into what happened in some of the events during the prevamp. So like I never would have found that if like we hadn't just trusted each other totally to play off where we were going with the scene, and it just took a entirely different direction than what we both planned.
Lekar.
Devlin is an absolute terrifying monster of an ST, and I mean that in the highest compliment possible. Like they said, the intrigue, but not only that, the way he can pivot is spectacular. We could completely just derail his entire thought process, and just like that, he will find a way to make it work. He doesn't, shut down and go, okay, now what do I do? No, he rolls with it. And that is one of the things I love about him more than anything is he does not back down or get uh, unmotivated or fear what's going to happen next. He just takes that, makes it his own, and he goes, okay, I'm going to ruin your lives now here. And he does. And we cannot get enough of it. It is this thing that he could tell us everything. He could lay out the entire story on a board for us to see, tell us at every twist and turn he's going to put in front of us. And no matter what happened, he would still surprise the hell out of us.
And Truck.
I've got to concur with everything said. Early on, Devlin came across Nick's, I'd say, annoying ability to come across things way too early than he intended. But instead of like locking it down, instead of being okay, like we got okay, that's just not going to happen. Devlin had a phenomenal pivot and turn when it comes to it. So he's a master of yes and while also very much planning out and following through. I I just it's not that I'm lacking words. It's that there's too many to describe how wonderful a storyteller is, truly. On top of that, I think people are about to see just how phenomenal he is. Like everything up to now was fantastic that's been shown so far. What's coming up is multiple tiers above. And
Absolutely.
it's just astounding. I feel like I really click with Devlin as a storyteller. I can bounce off just as much as he might bounce off me, and I can't tell if he's improvising or if it's already something planned. And he gives all of us all we need to run our characters, experience the story, and truly enjoy ourselves.
One of the things I love about Devlin as an ST is he brings something familiar from his experiences with D&D. Like he's primarily experienced in D&D. A lot are surprised to know that this was his first experience with Vampire the Masquerade, was the St. Pete experience, and that he's learned a lot of this through the St. Pete atmosphere. But he brings familiar elements from other TTRPGs into this and blends it in a nice mixture with World of Darkness. So if you haven't had a lot of World of Darkness experience, you can still take some comfort in some of those elements from other TTRPGs that seem familiar, or from other, stories that seem familiar, while still bringing in the dark edge of World of Darkness. And more than anyone else, he brings in the a proper kind of sprinkling of fantasy on top of it all. Whereas World of Darkness can be a very grounded game, grounded in reality, for better or worse. He sprinkles in just enough fantasy in there to keep that intrigue, but also that escapism alive in the TTRPG experience. And that's something that I admire them for and their ability to do. And for those who don't know a lot about Devlin, we did an After Dark interview very early on. It's called Bear the Bard, which was a former moniker. So you can go back and watch that After Dark interview to really dive into the brain of Devlin and to hear about their journey into TTRPGs and the storytelling experience. That being said, with the good can come some recommendations or challenges, as I've heard it phrased before. What are some things that you as players would like to see more of from Devlin, or you would like to challenge him or them to work on a little bit more, or to entice the storytelling experience a little bit more? Kyrie, we'll start with you.
Oh, well, I think we're gonna see that coming up, at least not on the stream immediately, but at the table where we're at right now. Uh, one thing I think Devlin has had an issue with is dealing with, a lot of action happening in one scene. And by action, I mean like mechanical action. Like you got to roll dice for this, you got to roll dice for that. As long as it's narrative, he's got a really good, strong grasp of it. But when it comes to tracking all the little minutia of what's happening in a place, like where are these NPCs going, what are these multiple PCs doing, that is something that I think he's gonna get put through the fire here shortly with the way that our story is going. And honestly, I think he's going to come out the other side just fine, though.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Noree.
Be better if I actually put my mic down. So I would say that uh, he could utilize his table mods a little more on getting help. He doesn't seem to like to ask for help, and that's really just my challenge, is to ask for help and utilize that more.
Lekar.
Honestly, Noree beat me to it. There have been times where he's been trying to figure something out, and it's like, we're here for you. We can help you. Let us help you. We help each other at this table. We've helped each other since the beginning. There are plenty of us who can be at his disposal if necessary.
And Truck.
Kind of along the lines. I mean, there's not really a lot that it's like like you have to try to think of things when it comes to that one. I think the biggest one for me would be he, like he doesn't need to be perfect. He's phenomenal as is, whether it's in presentation or storytelling. Like I think he can stand to let himself have fun and doesn't have to worry about things being perfect. He's just that good already.
Okay. So we're gonna give our dear Devlin a break here because I know they're blushing over on their end and probably muting the stream every few moments to try and avoid the potential embarrassment they're feeling. But if you were to explain to someone who has never had the opportunity to play with Devlin before, what would you kind of sell them on at sitting at their table? How would you sales pitch it on Devlin's behalf to joining their table? Because for those who don't know, Devlin is also a professional game master and storyteller over on Start Playing. You can get the links to all that in the After Dark video or in our sponsored vendors down below. So you could potentially play a wide variety of systems with Devlin. So now you, as players who have played at their table before, how would you sales pitch Devlin as a storyteller or a game master, DM, whatever the case may be? Kyrie.
Yeah, having brought a really complicated, complex character, like one of the things that I would definitely throw in there is don't be afraid to bring them a character that you think is off the wall or might not work. If it's one of those ideas that you've just had and you don't think that anyone else could ever approve this, would ever allow you to do it, pitch it. Pitch it, let it and see if they'll run with it. And I can guarantee you while you're playing, Devlin's going to give you the most out of your character. Devlin's going to allow you to take your character in the direction that you think you should take it, and yes, and with you the whole way, like Truck was saying, and continue to add to your story and build your story out. And Devlin's also really good about making sure that your story fits in with the narrative that's being told. And that is a talent that not a whole lot of storytellers have. And that's one thing that I would pitch, especially if you want to purchase their services. Like, absolutely expect that your backstories will be integrated into whatever story is being told.
And to echo that statement, having played in other games of Devlin's, they create a world. Like they create a fully fleshed, living world. They have an entire fantasy setting that they've created of their very own. And I can tell from being in one shots that they incorporate your actions into the lore of that world. So Devlin has this amazing ability to make you feel like your actions matter, like they're important, that you are part of something grander. So I definitely recommend everyone to check that out. But Noree, let's hear some more praises and sales pitches for Devlin.
Sales pitch. Got it. Hey kids, like violence? How about emotional trauma? He has that in spades. So much. Um one of my favorite things though is a lot of his special NPCs or his like signature NPCs have connections to each other, and you can see like it working below the surface. Like you may not expect them to be um necessarily connected, but then you'll start to see these like patterns that are just really really cool to see that they come out in the story, and how they intertwine with your characters' backstories, because he really does, as Kyrie said, have a good job of integrating your backstories into the plot itself.
Lekar.
No matter what you bring, no matter what idea, like Kyrie said, no matter how outlandish it might seem, Devlin will work with you. He will absolutely take it, and even if it doesn't quite fit what he's going for, he won't outright dismiss it and say, no, you have to give me something else. He'll be like, okay, well, how about this? Or how about you add this? He is willing to work with anybody. Nothing is ever off the table with him. And it'll be such a way that when he's done with your character, he will bring nothing but pain and suffering and misery to it, and you will love every last second of it, and you will enjoy it, even while you're crying over the tears of your new character sheet you have to now create.
Chuck.
Lekar had it on point. I have to say, Devlin inspires creativity and is willing to, if you let him take the reins, as a storyteller should, you will be rewarded in a way that is absolutely unique, special, and tailored to you. And without isolating, without alienating, without in any way, without anything negative. Give him the reins and he'll take you for a ride.
Now we're going to get into a little bit of spoiler territory as the namesake of this group, Bloody Strings, the first storyline involving Benjamin and the Malkavian hunting Nosferatu. Let's talk a little bit more about that. Now, if you haven't had an opportunity to watch the Bloody Strings storyline or haven't been caught up with the stream so far, you might want to pause this if you're watching it on VOD, or mute it if you're watching it live for about 10-ish or so minutes, as we're going to talk about what has already been streamed. And shame on you for not staying up to date on it, because it is a fantastic and wild story. But if you are going to listen in, maybe this will give you some highlights to look out for. So in this story, this is kind of the how the group came together, how you started to find your footing, how your characters got better defined, or at least how you started to embody them. What would you say was some of the most shocking developments that happened within that first storyline of the Bloody Strings? Kyrie, we'll start with you.
Most shocking developments. And we're full spoiler territory right now, right? Like,
We
just make
are.
sure about
Yep.
that. I think the most shocking development was coming into the scene, finding Edwin hemmed up in such a way that it looked like Jigsaw had gotten a hold of him, and some contraption around his neck, and the words liar carved into his chest. Like, that was one of the scenes where I was like, okay, definitely something deeper going on here. If we didn't catch it before, this is the signs for us to say, okay, we should probably start digging. And made me very disappointed in the fact that I have a character that doesn't want to dig because plausible deniability means I don't necessarily have to get in trouble. So as a player, I was torn, but that was one of those moments it just really stood out to me as absolutely shocking, especially since it happened in Elysium.
Yeah. Noree.
I think my one of the shocking moments, aside from the Edwin being hemmed up, would have been the the scene where we'd first come across Benjamin in an alley, and he had been attacking one of the Malkavians, and we ended up getting into a fight with him, and he bit off his tongue and like sprayed it and like caused all the Malkavians to be connected to each other. And it was just insane, and I still don't to this day know how Benjamin did it. We still have yet to figure that out. So there are still plot lines that are extending from the beginning of the game that we still haven't figured out quite yet.
Lekar.
I was actually going to bring up the Benjamin alley fight. Sitting there watching this happen and not quite understanding, but watching who it affected, going, wait, hold on. Why didn't it affect me? Interesting. And then slowly piecing together bits and pieces of everything, and then having revelations thrown on him and him going, I don't care. It doesn't affect me. If it affected me, then we'd have a problem. But it doesn't, so you're fine.
Truck.
Actually, mine's near the end. Ben genuinely was the first string. That is leading down a journey that we're coming up on. But the way it started with Al and his ties to Ben, and how Nick was able to, in the last second, open up a door to mystery that has, for better or worse, sent them down one hell of a rabbit hole.
Okay. Interesting. While we're sitting in spoiler territory with the current ongoing storylines that have yet to be seen, what is a question that you or your character have that you're hoping to find out the answer to? Something that you might not know, whether it's about your own personal storyline, whether it's about the grand storyline that's happening right now. Maybe it's about something that happened in the past that's hinting to something coming up. What is a question that if you could ask Devlin and get an honest answer to, you would want to ask, or that is kind of lingering in your brain throughout this whole process? Kyrie.
Is Chicago's Khalid behind this or not? Is probably the question that I would ask.
Okay. Noree.
Is Edwin a Lasombra?
Lekar.
About my own personal character backstories and things like that, I would, knowing what Devlin does with his past iteration characters, will the ghosts of my past come back to haunt me?
Okay. And Truck.
Can Nick overcome above all others?
Okay. Those are some juicy and fascinating questions. So, to wrap things up here, I'd like you to give your best sales pitch for people who have been hesitant about tuning into Bloody Strings, or maybe have caught an episode but haven't gotten caught up on the story. How would you sell people on watching this particular chronicle, and what could they, find interest in? Kyrie, we'll start with you.
Yeah, Bloody Strings, like I said, is a lot of intrigue. And there is more intrigue going on than is immediately obvious at first blush. And for anyone who likes the jihad, for anyone who likes intrigue, for anyone who likes stories that are based around that, definitely tune in. Definitely give it a listen. The questions that we asked here, like, I mean, the fact that we're asking if a well-placed Tremere keeper of Elysium is a Lasombra, uh, definitely watch for the intrigue.
Noree.
So just not the intrigue that Devlin puts out, but the secrets of the coterie itself. Bloody Strings is a game full of secrets and ties to each other and ties to the city. It is heavy in intrigue and heavy in Camarilla, uh, backstabbing and manipulation in and out of the coterie. So if you love those elements, definitely give it a watch because you'll see all of them.
Lekar.
Do you want to see people who are friends in real life act like they don't like each other that well? absolutely. That's what you're going to get here. We play off each other, and we know how to we kind of know the inner workings of each character to a point, but we still know how to bounce off each other and just play in this absolute crazy sandbox that Devlin has given us.
And Truck.
If you like story, if you like character, the twists and turns of Bloody Strings makes you question what would you do, and you're not always going to like the answer. And that's one of the best things about a story you can ever ask.
So we've got 2 new players that have joined the Bloody Strings cast. Hopefully, that we'll have on a future edition of After Dark as a whole group to talk about this a little further down the road. What are you most intrigued by with these 2 new players, being Kendall and Missy Mew, that are joining the table? And what are you looking forward to them shaking up about this dynamic so far, Kyrie?
Yeah, in fact, we've had a couple of games with them actually in the coterie. They haven't been streamed yet, of course, but the characters they've brought are unique and interesting and stand up just as well to the characters that are already on the stream. They are just as complex. They are uh, just as deep, and I am very interested to see how all of our characters end up getting along or not.
Noree.
So, spoiler warning on spoilers on this because so right or when we began, it was basically a Toreador Malkavian coterie. That's like the dynamic we made up, and I'm interested in Kindle. She's playing a different clan, and I'm interested in seeing like how she will shake up the dynamic of the group itself. And as Kyrie said, they both have great characters. And Missy Mew, I love her character. I I I do, and I just love seeing how she interacts with everyone else and the choices she makes, because definitely stay tuned, because some of the choices that she has made in the most recent episodes or the most recent sessions have definitely deeply impacted the coterie as a whole.
Lekar.
The 2 new players, they were a little worried about how they would mesh, and from the start, they fit in perfectly. And every time I get to sit down with them, it is just they fit in so well more and more, and I love everything they bring to the table, and I cannot wait to see where they go from here.
And Truck.
I gotta agree. Mew and Kindle both brought such a vibrancy in their own way to the group. Kindle's character is just more mystery to and wrapped in enigma. I think I'm gonna quote Kyrie, "Poison Skittle." Um, Mew is just as much a mystery, but it's the most endearing person in the world. But you know they're a kindred, and you know there's something more behind that, and you're just like, I have to know, but you must be protected at all costs.
Well, if you haven't been sold on Bloody Strings yet, you need to go talk to somebody, because this show has been a wild ride so far, and I know that the wild ride is just beginning. You can catch up on all of the Bloody Strings episodes either on Twitch or YouTube. There are playlists on both, so you can start at the very beginning, see where this journey has gone. If you're a few episodes in, catch up on the rest, because the Bloody Strings airs every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern here on Twitch, but it's available on YouTube 5 days later. It's also on our podcast, which is available on Spotify for those of you who can't watch the experience. You can at least tune in and listen. So check out Bloody Strings. Also, head on over to our website, SPbN.com. We've got all of the episodes listed there on the games page for Bloody Strings, where you can see an up-to-date cast list. You can see all of the episodes listed down below. and you could just keep up with the entire journey they've been on. Thank you so much to all of you for taking the time to join me tonight. It has been an incredible experience, and we're definitely going to have you back as the story progresses to get an update on all of the crazy antics that have taken place. But I really, really do appreciate you taking the time for being here. Some of you returning, some of you for the first time. It's been a wild ride. Is there anything that you want to promote or plug as guests here on After Dark before we put a bow on this thing? Kyrie.
No, I just want to go ahead and promote the website. Like, go to the website. There's cool stuff on it. There's also a dice spot. It's cool.
It's
Use
very
it.
cool. Noree.
Um, other than the website, because you totally should go to the website. We do air Bloody Strings like Sunday nights, so be sure to watch. Uh, we like sitting in chat and goofing off and talking crap about what's going on in the story at that moment. So come join us.
And Lekar.
Did either of you mention the website? Because if not, I should totally mention the website. But no, like Noree said, Sunday night is our stream, but not only ours, there are a bunch of other stories on here that you get to see. And I am sad to say that I need to go and catch up on Tampa because werewolf is something I haven't dipped into and I really want to. So I should go back and watch everybody and experience that for the first time.
Truck.
I think on top of all the content, if this community is one of the best and most transformative I've been a part of, if you can join if you want to see if the community is for you, I really suggest it. It's wonderful. The stories are great. Please check out the content. It's all top tier, wonderful stuff. And I hear there's a website. I'm not entirely sure, but ask around, see if that's the case. Otherwise, that's about it for me.
Well, again, thank you to my amazing guests. Go check out all the links down below. Go, use our partnered vendors. They create amazing, amazing, amazing products. Everything from artwork to dice to all kinds of things that are available at your perusal. So go check them out. Go follow these incredible players on their social media. We've got their handles listed in the credits here after the episode. This week, we've got Bloody Strings airing tomorrow night. Then on Tuesday, the return of Rage Across Tampa as the second season of that show begins and the hunt for Bloody Mary is on. After that, we've got Don't Get Caught on Thursday. On Friday, we've got What the Hell Is That? Our Hunter the Reckoning show. And next Saturday, we'll be back with another episode of After Dark. We have a very, very special guest joining us. So just stay tuned for that and tune in to see who it is or pay attention to all our social media, which you can also follow down below. But for the incredible, incredible cast of Bloody Strings, I am Kent. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Have a good night, everyone.